Well, there's not much Traxxas stuff left in this. Let's have a look, we'll break it down and we'll install some new brass knuckles. Stay tuned. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So, a few weeks ago I got hold of an Injora IR40 body kit from Injora, obviously, and it's really good. I really like it. I love the way it looks. I love the way it fit on the standard chassis. If you wanted to do this as just a straight swap, it's brilliant, works perfectly, fits beautifully. I didn't want to do that, and as you saw if you watched that video, just wait for my dog to settle. So as you saw in the unpacking first review video, there were a few extra bits in that package. That included some axles, some other bits and bobs, the LCG chassis. That also included some, well, it was supposed to include some tyres. They didn't come in that package, but Injora sorted that out, no problem, sent them pretty quickly afterwards. So thank you to the guys at Injora for some good customer service. Since then it has moved on. So I have recorded all of those changes that I've made and upgrades that I've made as I've gone along, and the intention was to put those out as separate videos. But they really don't show you that much, they just show you me installing stuff. Right, so there was not a lot of interest there, to be perfectly honest, and all you would have seen was me time-lapsing through them. So I've decided to just do an overview of the whole build. I have now, as you can imagine, spent quite a few quid on this. There were a few challenges, there were a few things along the way that I wasn't happy about, so I will point those out. But we've got round them. We've added some 3D printed scale accessories, as you would expect, and it performs brilliantly now. You've got my little crawler course in the background there. It absolutely sails around that. It has no problem with any of it, really. The only thing it really struggles with is the tightness of it. It's only a 2 foot by 4 foot board, so it struggles to go around there without a few little reverses at either end. But other than that, it has no problem at all, and I'll put you some footage on that in a second. However, there are a few things that I still think it needs. One, I think it needs a bit of overdrive in the front. There are occasions where the front should be pulling it up, but it isn't, and the back is taking over and just pushing it and tipping it over. Now, that's partly to do with the heavy body and all of that kind of thing, but I think some overdrive would help there. And also I think it just needs a bit more weight in the front. I haven't got corner weight scales as I've mentioned before, but just kind of putting my finger under the skid and trying to work out where the balance point is. It's pretty central at the minute, so I think that weight is about a 50-50 split, which I want to try and change by putting some more weight in the front. And I may, because these wheels have brass insert rings in all of them, I may take the ones out of the back just to shift that balance a little bit further. But other than that, it's really good and I'm really pleased with it. As you can see, or as you will see as we go along, it's taken a few knocks and bruises. It's been out and about in the wet, muddy, slippery rocks, and it did pretty well on those as well given the conditions, but it does brilliantly indoors as well now. So let's not mess about any more than we need to. I will quickly now show you just a quick lap of the course, or lap or two of the course, just to show you how capable this thing is, and then we will put that brass on there. We'll do an overview of what I've included in this build so far, and then we'll give it another run round and see if it's any better. There you go. That's how easily it gets around that course now. Really, really capable little thing. Very pleased with it. So what I'm going to do, we'll go through an overview and we'll start from the ground up. Tyres. So I am using the Injora Rock Terrain. I think these are 64mm tyres. These are the stock foams and they're Injora vented wheels. They also have the Injora brass wheel weight rings in them, beadlock rings. Axles are the Injora plus 4mm aluminium axles with the lay-down servo mount. So we'll cover the lay-down servo mount part of that in a moment. Really nicely machined, if they are machined. If they're cast, they're really nicely cast. They come with all the bearings installed, all the drive shafts, C-hubs, you know, everything you need. They're just ready to go straight out the box. They also come with the lay-down servo mount and the steering and drag links that you need. Then we've got the links, so the suspension links. Now these are a bit of an experiment. So these were, I think, £10 or £11. So that's maybe what, $15, $14. Got them on Amazon, and so far they've been alright. The only thing I found is that they come with nice steel pivot balls and all the things that you would expect. But one thing that I found, there were two of the pivot balls that were pretty badly made. Now I tried to install one of those anyway, and I ended up breaking the rod end trying to get that pivot ball in. So please just double check those. You don't get any spares with them. If you do buy these, you don't come with any spares. But if you've bought any Injora stuff in the past, you will almost certainly have spare pivot balls knocking about. I mean, push comes to shove, you could probably use the plastic ones out of the stock links. So fortunately I did have enough bits and pieces lying around that I was able to just replace those, so no problems there, and so far they're really nice. So they are a high clearance link, they're not spectacularly different to anything else. They are, looks like they are kind of bent with force rather than heat, so I don't know how strong they'll be, but let's be honest, they're not going to get a huge amount of stress on this little rig, even though it is probably twice the weight that it started out as. We still have the standard skid, we still have the standard drive shafts, and that's probably about as much underneath there that is standard. I have installed some skids. So these are obviously 3D printed skids, they're my own design. They're not perfect, but they work and I'm pretty pleased with them. I've just modified them slightly actually to have little flats on the top for electronics. So I'll show you that in a moment. Then we'll come on to the shocks very briefly while we're still looking at the underside. These are the Injora 59mm oil filled shocks. They come with oil in them and they still have the oil in them that they came with. They're reasonably well set up, although if you look at the rear axle, one of those sinks quite a bit faster, so I will be rebuilding those with some nice heavy oil. Front's pretty solid. At the back, I don't know if you can see that from straight above, but trust me, that side is dropping much quicker than that side currently. Okay, so let's see how well we can show you what's going on underneath. So some more changes under here from stock. We've got the Injora Universal LCG carbon fibre chassis rails. So they are the ones that are designed specifically to fit with the IR40 body. And as you can see, I did a bit of tidying up with the wiring. Really quite like this chassis. It's pretty well made, it's nicely machined. It is glossy carbon. I'm not a big fan of glossy carbon, I like matte carbon, but that's personal preference. It has no effect on the quality of the carbon. Injora cordless 11 kg servo. Very impressed with that so far. It's maybe not the fastest. I think things like the Reefs and the NDC, RC, anyway, some of the other ones out there are probably a little bit faster. but it's good and solid, and it is pretty strong. I've not had an issue since installing that servo where, an occasion where the wheels wouldn't turn, where it previously would have potentially got bound up. It just worked perfectly. So that's really good. Very pleased with that. Moving back, we've still got the standard motor. I haven't changed that yet, but I probably will. Stock gearbox, but that has the Injora metal crawler gears in, so the reduced speed. That in itself, if you've got a TRX4m and you do nothing else, put the crawler gears in. Makes a huge difference to the performance. It makes it so much more enjoyable to drive. I didn't actually like using this thing. In fact, it sat on a shelf for a year because previously with the stock gears, it just didn't crawl because they'd geared it as a trail truck. But I don't go trailing with small scale stuff. That's what the big rigs are for. I'm really happy with that. Really happy with those crawler gears. You can buy the $4 or $5 plastic ones, which are the Traxxas ones, or the Injora or other metal versions are a few pounds more or a few dollars more. They were about $12, so about £10, which is a little bit more expensive, but not a huge amount, and they're definitely worth it. The only drawback of them is they're a little bit noisy, but other than that, it's fine. Standard battery tray. Obviously, you can see I'm using a different battery there. I still do use the original battery as well, but I really like these little GNB batteries, 650 milliamp hour, 2S LiPo, and they've got a much higher C rating, so they've got much more punch. They don't fade. Really good little batteries. Been using those GNB batteries in little drones for a long time, and the stick versions in my SCX24 are great. Stock battery tray still, and then we get on to the Injora MB100 ESC. Again, really impressed with that. It's got a 50% reduction on reverse, which I think is a bit too much. I would prefer it if that was just a 25% reduction, so it was still 75% throttle in reverse, 100% throttle obviously in forward. But it works really well. Drag brake's good. The settings for that are all very good. So I'm really pleased with that so far, and it's beautifully quiet. You just don't hear that horrible ESC whine that you used to hear with the stock ones. So that again is another really good investment. However, if you make that investment, you are going to have to invest in a separate radio. I wanted myself and my son to have the option to run this and the MB24 at the same time. So I have got the smallest I could find receiver that works with my FlySky Noble. Brilliant bit of kit. So it is a bit chunky, and that's why I had to kind of redesign these sliders. Previously they just sort of sloped down into the carbon rails, but I've just sort of raised a flat space on there just to mount the electronics. So I've put one on either side. And then there's a little cutout there as well for the battery catch. Now those sliders do mean that I can't use the standard battery strap, but I'm not too bothered about that, to be honest. Elastic band does the job perfectly well. Then we move on to the 3D printed fuel cell. Nothing spectacular there. That's available on my Thingiverse page. It's a remix of somebody else's design. I can't take any credit for that. Done a little bit of tidying up of the wires for the lights. They're still not great, but they do the job, and it just looks a bit tidier from outside once everything else is tucked into the body. And that's it. That's the overview. Really pleased with it. Really impressed with all the bits. I'm particularly impressed with some of the stuff I'm getting from Injora at the moment, apart from one thing that I'll talk about in a moment. But I mean, the quality of the parts is really good. Everything fits together beautifully well. I don't have any issues with clearances or tolerances. They're all really good. The one thing that I wasn't happy with, I was exceptionally unhappy with at the time, but I'm over it now, was the IR40 is advertised and marketed as being compatible with the universal LCG chassis, which is also marketed and compatible with the lay-down servo axles, but actually they're not. This happened with the stock servo, also happened with this Injora servo. At full lock in this direction, you can see it a little bit there. It's not happening much. but at full lock it pushes the servo horn into the this thing. I can't remember the name of, bumper mount. I've already clearanced that out quite a bit, and it's only attached by one of the two screws. I've had to take out the little mounting post, and it still catches it a little bit, but it's not as bad as it was. So previously that body would pop right up to here with the stock kit. It was terrible. You know, I'm over that now. We fixed it. I've moved the steering link to the back of the servo arm. That helped a lot. When that was in place before, it was really bad, really bad when the link was on the front. And as you can see, it's going to be catching that quite a lot. Now that's partly because I run the suspension in a full sort of droopy setup. After moaning about this on a Facebook group, a few people suggested just moving the drag link onto the back of the servo arm. And of course that did make a huge difference. Also clearancing that out a little bit made a difference as well. The other thing I'm intending to do, but I haven't done it yet, is to just extend the two lower links at the front to just kind of clock that axle back a bit. So that will just tilt that servo back a little bit more, and that'll get it completely out of the way and hopefully improve the steering as well. That was the only issue I had with this whole build. I did have a slight issue in that I felt the chassis and the body, I'm not super happy about this whole huge gap here. I think they could have angled that up a bit more, got that out of the way a little bit. It just looks a bit weird. It's not so bad though. Once the servo's tucked up and in there, you kind of don't really notice that much, to be perfectly honest. But that's just me being a little bit picky about it, I think. Other than that, I think it's a really good setup and I'm really very pleased with it. So, next job is to install some brass. So I'm going to install some brass C-hubs onto the front axle. Just because, like I say, I think it just needs a little bit more weight in the front just to help keep that front wheel down, those front wheels down in certain situations. China is on holiday at the moment for Chinese New Year, so I went on to Amazon UK, which normally isn't very good for RC parts actually, and I got these, which frankly, on the face of it, look pretty much identical to the Injora ones anyway. They seem to be pretty well machined. Guess we'll find out. So there are, I think 11 grams it said for each side, which 22 grams extra on that front axle should be pretty good. There's no bearings in them or anything like that, so you just reuse the ones that you've got in the existing ones. They are designed to fit stock TRX4m axles. These Injora axles are designed to take accessories that fit the stock axles, so we will find out if they do. Let's do that now. There we go. I mean, just sort of placing those two things side by side, can really feel the difference. This is obviously a machined aluminium one, can really notice the difference there. Okay, so first problem, they are ever so very slightly too big. So they are just going to need to be filed down just a hair, probably just the anodizing, to be honest. Okay, so that's fit on there pretty nicely. No real resistance on there, which is good. Okay, do the other side, we'll come back and talk. Right, there we go, all back together. Super easy to do. So the only downside, or the only problem I had was I guess the paint. Is it paint? I'm not sure if it's paint or if it's anodizing, but whatever it was anyway that was on the outside of those knuckles just made them a hair too thick to fit straight into the Injora C-hubs. Now that may be just down to the mixing of manufacturers, maybe that they're just slightly out of tolerance, but all the other tolerances seem pretty good. The bearings just slotted in there beautifully, so Pretty pleased with those for, I think I paid £11.99. It's about $14, $15, something like that currently. And they arrived next day to my door. So the Injora ones, if I bought them from a UK supplier to get next day delivery, would be £20. So I could have waited, but I didn't want to, frankly. So I'm giving these a try. We'll see how they go. And if they turn out to be rubbish, which I can't see how they will be, but if they turn out to be rubbish, I'll buy some more expensive ones. But for now, I'm pretty pleased with those. So I'm going to go and chuck them on the course and we'll see how it fares. Is it any better? It's going to be hard to tell on that course, particularly because as it stands at the moment, this rig pretty much demolishes that course anyway. Let's go find out. Oh, I've overcooked it there. Interestingly, that's twice now the steering servo has stalled out. Made a hash of that. Oh, did it again. So again, the steering servo just stalled out there. That's a slight worry. So I don't know if it's stalling out or if it's just getting stuck. So maybe those knuckles are getting it stuck. There we go, got around this time. Yeah, look, they're sticking. So there we go. Hard to tell, really, whether it made any huge difference. Like I say, it already pretty much smashed that course. Beforehand, still smashes it now. There were a couple of occasions there where the steering kind of jammed up. So whether that's something to do with these, whether I just need to take a little bit more off them so that they run a little bit more freely, I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. But you know, not a big deal. If that's the case, just pop them out, shave them down a little bit more. Can't see any other reason why they would bind up other than they were just pretty snug in the C-hub. Phil from the future here. Just a quick warning. When I was doing the test runs of the knuckles, I noticed after a few more test runs, not on the initial one, but I noticed after a few test runs, I couldn't make it around the turn onto the bridge anymore. So I'd lost some steering angle. So I had a better look and I could see that the knuckles were hitting the C hubs, caster blocks, whatever you want to call them. So there is clearly a bit of a mismatch there. Now that might be a thing with the mix of these blocks and the Injora hubs. Although it may just be the same on standard axles as well. So what I did, I attacked mine with a little jeweler's file and filed some of the material off the back. I also continued to file down the pivot points as well, because I noticed that they were not as free moving as they should be. And actually the servo was getting quite hot from a few runs around the track. So buyer beware. I've still kept the blocks on there. Now I've filed them back, which you'll have seen in the photo, and they're moving nice and freely now because I've sort of clearanced those a little bit more. So I've got no problems with them now. I'm quite happy with them now. Servo's not getting hot. They're running nice and free. I've got my steering angle back. But just be aware, if you do buy them, you might have to do a little bit of extra work. Right, back to the main video. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at the overall kind of rundown of the build. Let me know if that's the kind of thing you want to see in the future, rather than the bit by bit builds that we've been doing over the last few weeks. It certainly is easier for me. One of the things that makes it difficult for me to get videos out at the moment is the editing time. I just don't have time to edit them. So if that's a good approach, then that's an approach we can take in the future. If you would rather see those kind of more detailed build videos, don't worry, there will still be some of those coming in the future, I'm sure. But for now, if you did enjoy the video or you found it useful, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done already and you would like to see more of my videos, and hit the notification bell so you see when they do come out. They are not super regular, so that notification bell is all the more important so that you do see them when they come along. But thanks for joining, thanks for tuning in and sticking with us, and hopefully we will see you on the next one, where we'll be looking at the rock van. Bye for now.